It is 12 noon and good afternoon, everybody. Today at the Summer Seminar Series, we have Tiffany Caudle, who is a coastal geologist at the Bureau of Economic Geology. She's involved in projects that study shoreline change, coastal processes, coastal mapping, severe storm effects, and beach recovery. Tiffany is responsible for the Texas High School Coastal Mapping Program, a research and outreach effort that works with students and teachers at 8 coastal schools. She has a BS in geology from Juniata College and an MS in geology from the University of South Florida. And so today she is going to talk to us about the Texas High School Coastal Mapping Program. So without further ado, here is Tiffany.
Thank you, Harold. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
We can.
Good, awesome. Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for coming today to hear this presentation about the Texas High School Coastal Monitoring Program. This is a research and outreach program here at the Bureau, and we partner with students and teachers in the study of the Texas coastal environment. This project has a dual benefit, both of enhancing science education for the students who participate, while also providing extremely valuable data for our dynamic Texas coastline that we share with the state and with other researchers, as well as coastal managers and coastal planners along the entire Texas coast. So today what I want to do is I want to share with you some of our program goals, how the students collect the data. I'm going to introduce you to the different schools, maybe tell a couple stories about them, and tell you about the coastal issues that the students are studying in each of their areas on the Texas coast. Now, before I begin, I'll start by saying I'm going to tell you what I tell my students, because we have a couple of rules before we go out to the beach when we go on these field trips. The first is that you should probably bring some bug spray and some sunscreen, because the mosquitoes will probably be really bad and there's no shade at the Texas coast. Hat, sunglasses might be useful. You might want to bring those along. A rain jacket is always a good thing to have in your pack. And finally, please wear closed-toed shoes. Even though these are field trips to the beach, we go into the vegetation and there's some nasty stuff back there that you do not want to be stepping on in your flip-flops or your bare feet. All right, with those rules out of the way, let's start. So the Texas High School Coastal Monitoring Program was started back in 1997. So this is a 20+ year outreach program that the Bureau has been operating. And it started with 3 goals, and these 3 goals have continued from 1997 through the present. The first is to provide high school students with a real-world learning experience. So we're not just giving them a lab exercise, we're taking them on a field trip and showing them how to collect real data that is then used in research projects by us here at the Bureau, as well as by coastal managers and planners and the General Land Office. The second is to obtain a better understanding of the relationship between coastal processes, beach morphology, and shoreline change. So the data that these students are collecting is helping us understand how the beach, the dune environment is changing on a year-to-year basis, a season-to-season basis, and then over the decades as well. We get out there 3 times a year on field trips, or we try to get out there 3 times a year on field trips. So we have a large data set that these students have been collecting over the years. The third goal is to increase public awareness and understanding of coastal change, processes that are influencing the Texas coast, and hazards that are that you'll find on the Texas coast. And all of this data that the students that collect is available for coastal managers, for scientists, for the students and teachers themselves, and also for the public. So increasing public awareness, we do that, number one, by interacting with students and teaching them about their coastal environment and showing them how to collect data and make observations about the environment where they live. And then we also provide all this data about the Texas coast and how it's changing through our website, through publications, through talks like this one. And it's out there for anybody to use. Our website, we also try to create exercises for teachers and students who aren't participants in the program to be able to use in their classrooms. We have several sponsors for this. Our main title sponsor is the Coastal Management Program. This is through the Texas General Land Office, and it is funding, it's federal funding that comes from NOAA. So they are our sponsor that has been sponsoring this program since it began back in 1997. We work with the Lower Colorado River Authority. They help lead some of the field trips in the one area of the Texas coast. Hart Research Institute, graduate students from there come out and help me with the students. There's a middle school that we work with in the Corpus Christi area, and it's nice to have extra hands other than just myself, trying to organize middle school students and have them collect the data. So over the last couple of years, we've had graduate students helping us with the middle school students in Corpus. We've also been funded by some smaller foundations that help provide support for paying for buses to transport the students to the Texas coast, as well as paying a slight stipend for the teachers that are participating as well. So the environment that we study, we are out on the barrier islands along the Texas coast. Trying to get the laser pointer. Oops. Give me 1 second. There we go. So this is a schematic of a coastal environment. This is the barrier islands offshore from the mainland with a coastal bay in between. On the other diagram here, this is the mainland on the left-hand side. You have the coastal bay or estuary, and then the barrier island. And the area that we focus on with the students is this small section right along the Texas coast, looking at the foredunes, the coppice area, the beach, right to the water's edge. We do not go into the water when we are on these field trips for safety reasons. As you can imagine, that it's a little nerve-wracking to take a bunch of students to the coast and try to keep them out of the water sometimes is a little difficult, but we work right up to the water's edge and then back behind the foredunes. This is where we're focusing on collecting our data. There are 3 different data sets that we collect every time we go on a field trip. The first one is a topographic profile, and this is collecting the information about the shape of the beach and the shape of the dune and the beach out to the water's edge. So we typically start behind the foredune on the coast and work up over the dune and across the beach out to the water's edge, measuring that same profile every single time we go out there so that we can see how it is changing through time. The second piece of information that we collect is looking at collecting observations about how the beach process is on the day that we're out there. Where is the wind coming from? How fast is it blowing? Which direction are the waves coming from? Because that impacts the longshore current. How big are they? And how long is the wave period? We also try to measure the longshore current on the day that we were out there. This is always a fun activity. And we use oranges and throw them into the surf, and they track how long or how far they move along the beach in a set period of time. This is throwing oranges in water is everybody's favorite activity, and they always fight over who gets to throw the oranges. And it's kind of funny because there's a delicate balance. You don't want to throw that orange out too far that you lose sight of it and then you can't track it, which happens quite often. You always have like the baseball player or the football player that tries to throw it as far as they can out into the water, and well, that's bad data because we just lost our sample. But you don't want to throw it too close to the water's edge because then the orange doesn't move. So trying to get these students to find that good balance of how far to throw an orange is is surprisingly complicated some days. The third piece of data that we collect, the third data set, is using handheld GPS units to survey the position of the vegetation line and the shoreline on the day that we are out there. So they just walk along, like these pictures show, they walk right along the edge of the vegetation, the continuous vegetation at the back edge of the beach at the start of the dunes, and then also right along the water's edge. We have them map a feature that we call the wet dry line. This is what we map on aerial photography as the shoreline position. It's also what we try to extract an elevation when we use LiDAR data. We try to extract an elevation that is as close as possible to that line of that wet dry line on the beach, so that we are comparing the same thing through time, even though the technology is changing through time, is how we map that shoreline position. Occasionally, my students help me collect additional data for different projects. These examples here, they are using a Trimble R8. They are measuring some points in parking lots, on streets, that we then use when we have a LiDAR survey where we need to ground truth the LiDAR data that we're gathering. So I put them to work helping us collect additional data, and they seem to enjoy it as well. Another piece of information that we have them collect with these GPS surveys is the position of the wet dry line on the beach. The handheld GPS units that they use just give us a horizontal position. They don't give us a very good vertical position. So occasionally, especially at times when we know that we have a LiDAR survey coming up, I have them walk this wet dry line on the beach with the GPS unit to get a really precise position of that shoreline position. And then we compare that to our LiDAR data at the time. We compare that to our LiDAR data to make sure that we are extracting elevation from the digital elevation models that is concurrent with the position of the wet beach, dry beach at the time of the survey. So I have just a couple examples here. This is from our latest update of the Shoreline Change project that we completed back in 2019. And we have student mapped wet beach, dry beach positions. Those are the orange lines in the 3 different examples. The GPS, the black dots, are that Trimble R8 data that was collected as well. And then the black dash line is the shoreline position that we extracted from the LiDAR data. And we're overlaying that on photography, nape photography, as well as imagery that we collected at the time of the survey, just to make sure that we are picking out the correct position of that shoreline. So the students' the data that they collect is extremely helpful for us for verifying that shoreline position, making sure that we are not picking an elevation that is too high on the DEM or too low. And this is something that we've started doing recently with these shoreline updates in 2016 and 2019, and it has been very helpful and excellent data. The students do a great job of helping us verify those positions. One other item that we have added just 2 years ago, we started working with what's called the Nerdl Patrol. This is a citizen science project that is being run by the Mission Aransas National Estuarine Research Reserve down at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute in Port Aransas. And they are asking citizens when they go to the beach or along any other waterway to spend 10 minutes doing a survey looking for nurdles, which are these plastic pellets that serve as a raw material in manufacturing of plastic products. And they're being lost in the system somewhere. They're being found in our waterways. They're washing up on riverbanks and on beaches and on lake shorelines by the millions. So we are going out and helping to do surveys, trying to see how many are being found on the Texas beaches. And then we upload this data to the Nerdl Patrol website. And then they're using the information that's gathering to help write laws and bills to help protect our waterways. So that's just some additional information that we're gathering, helping others with their research projects as well. So about our schools that are in the program. We have 8 schools in the Texas High School Coastal Monitoring Program. They're spread out along the entire Texas coast. We have High Island is our most northeastern school, all the way down to Port Isabel High School on the southern tip, down on South Padre Island. So we collect data on Bolivar Peninsula, Galveston Island, Surfside Beach and Quintana Beach, Matagorda Peninsula. Then we have a big gap down to Mustang Island, where we work with Port Aransas High School, Cunningham Middle School on North Padre Island, and Port Isabel High School down on South Padre Island. In 2018-19, during that academic year, every school completed 3 field trips. We had 24 total field trips that academic year, and we worked with about 340 students. The last academic year that we were active, the 2019-2020, we got 16 field trips and we worked with about 200 students. Some of those are repeats. It's the same student from the fall field trip to the winter field trip. We were not able, we had all our field trips scheduled, or I had all my field trips scheduled with the schools for April and May of 2020. And we have not been able to get back out on any field trips during the 2021 academic year. We're hoping to begin doing field trips again this fall, but it'll depend on the school. I'm gonna leave that up to the school whether they'll allow field trips at this time. So we have, I guess I should go back a little bit. We have 8 schools. They each do 3 field trips during the year. One is in the fall, usually late September, early October. One is in the winter, usually January, February. And then the third one is in the spring. And that happens either in April or May. That field trip is really difficult to schedule sometimes because that time of the school year is really busy. You have to schedule around STAR testing and around end of course testing, and you have to schedule around prom because you don't want to, get a lot of mosquito bites or a sunburn before you go to prom. And then with some of the schools, we work with seniors, and that's a really busy time for seniors finishing up their academic career. So we've been pushing those spring field trips further and further into April to try to avoid some of those issues that we have with scheduling those field trips. So as of the end of 2020, this program has conducted a total of 348 field trips, which I think is pretty awesome. So let me introduce you to each of the individual schools. First one here, this is High Island High School. They are based in the town of High Island, and it's a really small school. They have less than 200 students from pre-K 3 all the way through 12th grade in the building. They're all in the same building. It's a really small, very small school district. I work with the 10th grade. I work with the entire 10th grade. This is the biology students that are in 10th grade at High Island. This science teacher that I work with there, her name is Maria Skewis. She is the science teacher for High Island High School. So she teaches all 4 grades of high school and has multiple preps throughout the day. So this is the smallest school that I've ever worked with, and it's a fun, interesting place to visit. So they started the program, they joined the program in 2016, and they have 3 monitoring sites that we've been looking at along Bolivar Peninsula. This BOL2 and BOL3, they are on either side of Rollover Pass, which has been closed in 2020, there was several years where there was discussion about closing this pass. It was opened back in, I believe, the 50s to try to increase water flow between the Gulf of Mexico and East Bay for water quality, helping increase the flow of water back and forth for water quality. But what was happening is a lot of sediment that was being eroded from these beaches on the eastern side of Bolivar Peninsula were being washed through the pass and being deposited in the bay and the intercoastal waterway. So they would have to dredge the waterway multiple times, annually, biannually, at the cost of millions and millions of dollars. And that's a lot of sediment that's being lost back into the bay because they're putting it in spoil piles instead of bringing it back out and nourishing the beaches. So the Corps and the General Land Office decided it was time to close this pass. This is a big issue on Bolivar Peninsula there. The residents down there are not happy about it because this was a popular fishing spot. But it's going to save millions of dollars, and there's plans to create a park with a pier and hopefully make a new fun fishing park for everybody. So the interesting thing about our two sites, especially this BLO2, with the closure of this pass, we're expecting to start to see some beach accretion in this area. That sand that would typically wash through the pass and be lost in the intercoastal waterway on the backside of the island will now travel along the island and then hopefully increase the beach width and the dunes in this area. So we're hoping that we're in a good position. We have good quality data pre-closure of the pass, and we should be able to document what the impact of closing that pass is. So here's some data from this Bolivar Peninsula site just to the west of Rollover Pass. It's a very narrow beach, small dunes, and it's been fairly stable. The dunes fluctuate through time, but they were highly impacted by this last 2020 storm season. So there was a lot of erosion. The upper picture here is from January of last year. The lower picture is from this past May, where the dune system, the vegetation has all been wiped out. There was a little bit of a breach here that sand washed through what little dune system there was there, and the beach is much, much narrower. So moving forward with the students, we're hoping to see recovery of this beach through time, and then also hopefully the impact of that closure of the pass. Another site that the High Island students monitor is we call it High Island Beach. It's right past the curve going into High Island on Highway 87. We would have to walk to it because the beach is extremely narrow at this location. And what you're looking at here in these pictures is this is the old Highway 87, the pavement pieces that are on the beach here. This is the old Highway 87 that used to travel all along Bolivar Peninsula up to Sabine Pass. And they obviously have had to close the highway now because it's in the swash zone on the beach here. We were monitoring this site. We would walk out here and collect some beach profile data, watching it get narrower and narrower and narrower through time, especially with Hurricane Harvey impacts. And then they started to do construction at that curve in the highway, and we weren't able to access that site. I was just out there in May, and I don't know if we're going to be able to reestablish that profile site because the beach is so narrow and it's extremely dangerous with all these big pieces of concrete still there on the beach and in the vegetation line and the dune system. So we'll have to see if we're going to be able to return to that site and keep monitoring. Ball High School on Galveston Island. This is the original Texas High School Coastal Monitoring Program school. So they were the first school that we started working with in 1997. And so they're the students that the protocol was established with, the data collection techniques, equipment, and they have been participants every single year except for the year after Hurricane Ike in 2008. So they've collected data every year except for one throughout the course of the program. They currently are collecting data at 3 sites. This DEL01, this is the Delanera RV Resort. It's just southwest of the end of the seawall. Right there is the end of the Galveston seawall. This is a highly erosional spot. They do beach nourishment projects here. In fact, we were told they're going to be doing another beach nourishment project here shortly, beginning this spring or summer. And they built a big dune, an artificial dune at this location, as well as nourish the beach. And I believe they're going to be doing the same thing here as well. So the students are monitoring this nourishment project at Delanera. This BEG02, this is at the Galveston Island State Park. This is our site that we have been monitoring the longest out of this entire program. So we have data going back to the 1990s at this site, and the students keep collecting data and adding to that, that data set. So we have a lot of very valuable information because it's in a natural setting. It's stuck in between 2 developments where there's homes that are right up at the dune line. And here at BEG2 within a state park, the beach and dune system can react naturally when there is a storm or there's an impact. We're monitoring, this is the Jamaica Beach subdivision on Galveston Island, and we have a site right here as well. So now we have this really great natural site that we're looking at, and we can compare it to a site that is right up against a neighborhood where you have homes and that you want to try to keep a dune system in front of, and they are putting in dune projects there, dune restoration projects, sometimes some beach nourishment there as well. So we have this nice comparison of a natural system and how a natural system wants to react with a system where they're doing nourishment projects and restoration projects. That BEG2 in Galveston Island, this was a very helpful site for us to monitor post-Ike, and that hit the Texas coast in 2008. So we were able to see how the dune systems were impacted. If you look at these 2 photos, this was immediately after Hurricane Ike made landfall in 2008. The dune system was about right here, and the dune system and the beach was eroded. Sediment was transported, washed over, and deposited on the backside of where the dune system had been. The shoreline moved 53 meters landward, and the vegetation line moved 56 meters landward. Since Hurricane Ike, the students have been collecting data documenting the recovery of this beach and dune system. So as of 2018, there's a nice foredune that has formed. There's a large coppice area. These are incipient dunes. Vegetation starts to grow and starts collecting more and more sand. Hopefully through time, a new dune line will form there. And the beach was fairly wide for Galveston Island. There was a nice system there. It has been impacted a bit with the 2020 storm system, but not back to this main foredune. It's about half of the Copus area was impacted in 2020. So this has been a great study site to look at to see how the dunes will naturally recover after a storm. Moving down the coast, this is Brazosport High School. They are based in Freeport, Texas. They are the newest school to have joined our program. They joined during the 2018-19 academic year. This was a stretch of the coastline where we didn't have frequent monitoring taking place. And this is the Surfside Beach area is a highly erosional site along the Texas coast. So we wanted to get a school involved in monitoring the beaches in this location. So we set up 4 different monitoring sites or profile sites for Brazosport High School. The Surf 1, Surf 2, which we were actively collecting data at. Surf 3, we had to stop collecting data at because there was too much erosion, and there was homes on the beach in the water where we had tried to set up a location there. So we added this Quintana site. This is over at the Quintana County Beach Park on the south of the Freeport Harbor Channel. The Brazos River outlet is a couple miles down the coast here. So this is a fun group. They are an environmental science students. There's seniors. That the environmental science program was started the year I reached out to see if they were interested in joining. So it was a natural fit for them to start collecting data in this location. So far they've just been collecting some baseline data, and we had a site, had a nice little dune. Sometimes when you're out there, the beach is fairly wide depending on the tide level. But the 2020 storm system did a little bit of damage here. That's in front of a restaurant that was allowing us to use their parking lot and beach access to get out to the beach to study it. And the dune system has been completely wiped away. We had put up a volleyball net there. I was surprised to see that when I was down there, because that was a vegetated area. And so I wouldn't think they would want to be in there playing volleyball when it was vegetated. But I don't know if we're going to go back to this same spot, if we're going to try to go back to this same spot. We'll have to see when the field trips are reinstated later this fall to see if this is a site that we're actually going to be able to monitor long term, or if we're going to have to pick another location. On Matagorda Peninsula, this is on the east side of Matagorda Peninsula, just to the east of the Colorado River outlet. We have 3 sites down there, and we work with 2 different schools, the Palacios School District and the Van Vleck School District. Both of these schools have to travel about an hour to get from their community out to the coast. So they each only monitor one site, collecting the beach profile, doing the GPS, and doing the observations. And this furthest one here, MAT-01, this is adjacent to 3 Mile Cut, which is sometimes it's an active washover channel. It's a really low-lying area. It was opened after Hurricane Ike. It quickly closed again. But this low-lying area here is really interesting to study with the Van Vleck students. Now they have to walk about a mile down the beach to get to their monitoring site. We can take 4-wheel drive vehicles and drive them down there, but we can't take a bus out on the beach. I have had a bus get stuck in the sand, and it is not fun. So the students walk. The very first time I went on a field trip with these kids, it was a middle school from Van Vleck. And the teacher, she brought like 30, 40 students, which is a lot of students to work with at one time. And she got like 10 sets of parents to come out there with their pickup trucks and trailers and haul all these kids down the beach back and forth. And the parents spent the day with us out there on the beach. That's only happened like one time, because it's really hard. And it was pretty nerve-wracking too, to see all these kids in the back of pickup trucks. They're always trying to get in the back of my pickup truck to have them drive them down there. And I can't allow that. So they have to walk. Palacios High School. And Van Vleck joined our program in 2005, I believe. Yeah, they joined in 2005. We started working with the middle school there. Then the teacher moved to the high school. So we have switched over to the high school students since that time. Palacios High School joined us in 2006. Their site, they only had to walk a little bit, because right here is the beach access road and to get out there. And so both of these sites that they monitor, they're very similar. There was a nice board dune, and it was impacted by Hurricane Ike in 2008, which Hurricane Ike was so large that it impacted a lot of the Texas coast. But here at Matagorda Peninsula, we saw there were some coppice dunes or incipient dunes in front of the main foredune that were eroded. There was a scarp at the front of the dunes. And since that time, we have been watching that foredune expand seaward. More sediment is being brought into the system here. The shoreline is moving as well. So this is a really healthy section of the Texas coast, and these students are helping us monitor how these dunes are changing through time. A little further down from their two sites is a site that we had established right adjacent to the Colorado River. This is where the Matagorda Bay Nature Park is located. The Matagorda Bay Nature Park is an LCRA park, and this is where the staff come out and help me with some of the field trips throughout the year. And so we had another school that was monitoring this location. And when we established it in 2005, they just had a small foredune that they had to go over and a narrow beach. But then in 2009, a new jetty was constructed at the mouth of the Colorado River, which has disrupted the bypassing of sand further to the west along Matagorda Peninsula across the Colorado River and then down onto the western part of Matagorda Peninsula. So the sand is now being being deposited here by this jetty. It's entrapping that sand, it's not allowing it to bypass, and the dune system and the beach have been expanding significantly through time. We've seen 125 meters of shoreline movement, so over a football field seaward in the last decade at this location. And what happened is this back part of in front of that main foredune that was there, we have a lot of swales, a lot of small coppice mounds, dunes that have formed, and these swales hold water. There's copperheads in there, mosquitoes are awful. And it just got to be too dangerous of a site for us to be having students walk through that area. So we had to stop monitoring, doing a beach profile at that location, just because I don't like going in there with the water and the snakes and the mosquitoes. That it was just too dangerous to have the students going in there. So that school is no longer with the program, but the Palacios kids and the Van Vleck kids will go out there on their field trip and they will just walk the vegetation line and the shoreline with the handheld GPS. So we're continuing that data set at this location. And it's been really cool to watch this beach grow and grow and grow through time. Further down the coast, we have Port Aransas High School. They're located on Mustang Island. They were one of the original schools in the program as well. They joined in 1999. And this is a fun school. These kids are pretty much up for anything. You can throw any challenge at them, any type of weather or condition, and they are fun to take out there, and they're always excited to go out there. They collect data at 3 sites, one right within the town of Port Aransas at MUI-1. It's near the pier. If anybody's been to Port Aransas, the Horace Caldwell Pier is right there. The profile site is adjacent to it. MUI-3, this site is right by the new golf course that they put in on Mustang Island. And then MUI-2 is down here in Mustang Island State Park. And all 3 of these sites are very interesting and very different. I'm going to focus on 2 of them. The first one, the MUI-1, which is near the pier, which you can see in these photos right here, is in a location where there is a lot of driving on the beach. There's a beach road, there's a speed limit. People are out there driving at all hours of the day and parking and then enjoying the beach. And they do a lot of beach maintenance at this location. So they're clearing the road, or they're clearing sargassum, the seaweed that washes up from on the beach, and doing maintenance to the dunes. So one of the things that they do to dispose of this sargassum that they scrape up from the beach is they will dig these giant pits in the dune line, in the foredune line, and then backfill them with the sargassum and sand that they scrape up from the beach. So they will refill it through time. So the data that we've been collecting for multiple years at this location, we've been watching that change in when they do remove the sand from the beach and then refill it back in, and then watching the vegetation line reestablish itself. And the beach system here stays pretty stable throughout time. The shoreline is not moving significantly landward or seaward during time. It's a very stable part of the Texas coast. And what we're also seeing is that foredune is also very stable. It's not being allowed to expand seaward because of the vehicle traffic there. It's keeping it in the same spot through time. And this is a post to down at Mustang Island State Park, where when we originally established the profile location at the park, we had one foredune. That red line in this plot and the blue line in this plot is the one foredune, and with a very narrow beach. Over time here at this location, we now have 2, 3, 4 foredunes that have expanded through time at Mustang Island State Park. So this is a really interesting site to go to. The beach still tends to be quite narrow, but the dunes keep expanding and that vegetation line keeps moving seaward as well. So the poor Port Aransas kids, their beach profile keeps getting longer and longer and longer as well. And we wear snake guards when we go into this site. There's very little maintenance here at Mustang Island State Park. So it's kind of cool to compare this site where there's like no maintenance on the beach. They don't scrape the sargassum. They don't do anything to their dunes. They allow them to react naturally through time, versus up in Port Aransas proper, where they're doing all kinds of beach maintenance constantly. Our middle school that we work with is called Cunningham Middle School at South Park. They are part of the Corpus Christi ISD program. We work with 8th graders here, and this is where I have some heart research graduate students come out and help me collect the data so that we can break them into group and have constant supervision. I don't know if anybody's worked with middle school students, but they're quite active, and these are the ones that I'm always trying to have to keep out of the water. They want to swim in the water in their jeans and t-shirts and sneakers and everything. They just want to go straight into the water. They monitor 2 sites on northern Padre Island. One is there's a large foredune system that has been rapidly changing through time. The vegetation on the dune is not stable, so we have lots of blowouts where the wind is carrying sand off the dunes at this location, and then it reestablishes itself, and then there'll be another blowout through time, over time. And we're comparing that data with a site on the end of the northern Padre Island seawall. So the northern Padre Island seawall runs right here along a small stretch of Padre Island. This is the Packery Channel. And this site receives beach nourishment from sand that is dredged from the channel from time to time and placed in front of the seawall to keep a wide pedestrian beach open in this location. So we have been out there after they've nourished that site and monitor how that nourishment program responds. It typically does not last long. The last time that I was just there in May, and the Gulf was right up against the base of the seawall. So there was practically no beach at this location at that time. So I'm expecting that there will be another nourishment project there again soon, and they'll redistribute some sand and try to place some of that sediment in front of that seawall to have to open up the pedestrian beach there again. So it's really interesting to contrast these 2 locations because they're right beside each other. And you have a site that has a big natural dune system. It's maintained, the beach is maintained there, but then you have this site that's right on the seawall, and to compare how they're changing through time. Oops. So this is just some of the data from looking how the dune, I'm standing in these pictures, I'm standing pretty much in the same location every single time, but you can see how the vegetation changes. And you can imagine it's windy all the time. When you're at the beach, it's always windy and that sand is constantly moving. So if there's not good vegetation on top of these dunes, that sand is easily transported from the top of the dune onto the backside of the island, which is the natural process, but you also want to keep a healthy dune system in place for when there are storms, for protection for the mainland. Our 8th school is Port Isabel High School. This is on the southern tip down on Padre Island. They monitor 3 sites down in Padre Island. They are also one of our oldest schools in the program. We've been working with them since 1999. Their 3 sites are pretty different. SPI 8 on the northern part of the city. This is up about where the development of the island ends. This is in front of, we call it the Tiki condos. It's a highly eroding, it's a erosional hotspot on Padre Island. SPI 2 is about mid-island. There's a nice healthy dune system here. And then SPI 1 is in Isla Blanca Park at the southern tip of the island. This is the Brazos Santiago Pass down here on the southern tip. So what these students have been monitoring are beach nourishment projects. The city has a relationship with the Corps of Engineers. When they dredge Brazos Santiago Pass, they use the sediment that they're dredging from the pass and they're putting it on the beaches within the city. So the South Padre Island, the city is benefiting from the nourishment project, or from the dredging that needs to take place in the Brazos Santiago Pass. It happens about every other year. You go out there and there's a nourishment program going on. And this is one of the sites where they place the sand pretty often, is in front of this Tiki condominiums. They experiment here with dunes. They try to do dune restoration projects. Sometimes they perform well, sometimes they're eroded and they have to start over again. So we have been monitoring how long these nourishment projects last, how well the dune is performing over time. They put in sand fence. They're trying all different kinds of strategies here to try to establish these dunes and keep them in position. Our other site, SPI02, which is about mid-island, also benefits from these nourishment projects. The plot on the top here, the blue is showing the position of the vegetation line moving seaward through time, as well as the shoreline, which is the green line, moving seaward over time. And then the red dots is the volume of sand in the beach and dune system. And again, that is increasing over time. And this is due to these nourishment projects that are happening on the beach. They're continuously gaining sediment at these locations due to the nourishment projects. A lot of times they're not placed right here in front of this location. They're placed to the south, and then the natural transport of sediment is moving it along to the north and to this location. So the dune field here has gotten much larger since we started monitoring. In fact, when we started monitoring here in 1999, there was no dunes, there was no vegetation. It was just white beach from the seawall or from the retaining wall out to the water's edge. And we have been watching the vegetation grow and this dune system grow. They're not big dunes, they're not tall dunes, but the field is getting wider and wider, and that's benefiting the structures that are behind there, because you have more and more sediment that will take the impact of a storm if it were to come on shore here. I like to brag about these Port Isabel kids. They're a fun group. They're really smart. They're really bright kids. And over the past several years, they have been invited to the Winter Outdoor and Wildlife Expo that is held in South Padre Island every winter. And they have been invited to present this program and the data that they collect. So it started, the very first year they did it, it was for like 4th graders. It was for elementary age kids. And since then, it's for the winter Texans that go down and visit in the Gulf Coast or in Padre Island during the wintertime. There's presentations on the wildlife in the area, the gators, the sea turtles, birds. Everybody loves the birds down there. But these kids, the presentation that they put on is one of the most attended presentations that occurred during the day. So they describe the program, and I'm not there. This is them doing it. The teacher doesn't participate at all. It is the students themselves doing the presentation. They talk about the program, what it is, the data that we collect, and then they take all their equipment and they show the folks that come to hear them talk, they show them how to use the equipment. They're indoors, they're not even outdoors, they're not on the beach. So they have gotten creative. They got a Little Tikes roller coaster, if anybody's ever seen one of those, and they use that to demonstrate the changes in topography, create a miniature beach indoors so they can show them how to collect a beach profile. The other thing that two of the students from Port Isabel have done is we were invited to speak at the Coastal States Organization meeting in the fall of 2019. These are coastal states from, I thought it was just the Gulf of Mexico, but I think it's the entire US coast. They have an annual meeting, and we were their invited presentation for the evening to talk about the program. And we decided to ask two of the students to come and speak as well, and it was very well received. So I gave them the general overview of the program. The two students went back and forth discussing the locations that we monitor there on South Padre Island and the changes that they have seen since they've been in school there. And then the teacher read some testimonials from some of the students about how what the program has done from them. And then I explained showed him some data from the rest of the Texas coast. But it was really exciting to be the invited speakers to this presentation, and then to have the students involved. It was good for them. It was great for me to hear them, what they had to say about it, and it was just a really fun day. Some of the challenges that we face with field trips, there's always challenges with field work, and then you add in students and their safety. So you have extra challenges that you're always trying to overcome. So sometimes we have to deal with construction. This is that site on South Padre Island that I was just discussing, the SPIO2, where they constructed a new dune walkover, because like I was telling you, the dune system here has expanded. So they had to put in a new dune walkover system. And of course it was right on our profile, almost right on our profile line. Fortunately, it's not on our profile line, so we are able to continue to monitor this site and watch how the dunes recover after they did this construction. At another site, there was construction that completely wiped out our profile site. We lost our datum, our starting point, so we have to reestablish where we're going to set up there. Beach nourishment will cause us issues from time to time. Up here this is at Highland Beach. This is that curve in the road that I was talking about. This goes into High Island. The water, the Gulf of Mexico has eroded this area so much that the water is washing across the road often, many times during the tidal cycle. And it's unsafe to pull over and get kids to park and to be able to walk on some of these sites. So construction and access to our locations is always a challenge. Are we still going to be able to get back to the same site? At the Galveston Island State Park, they're doing construction to the Gulf side, the entire Gulf side of the park. And now we can't access our site there either. So it's kind of disappointing, because that's a site that we've been monitoring long-term. I'm hoping once the construction is over, we'll have easier access back to that site. So that we can continue this long data set that we have there. But I don't know if they're changing the dunes in that location. So we're just going to have to see what happens there. Others challenges is the weather. Always the weather. In the wintertime, it could be 70 degrees or it could be 30 degrees. I have a duffel bag in my office full of sweatshirts and extra jackets that I take on all our winter field trips, because I never know what the weather is going to be like when we're doing these field trips, whether the kids will be prepared. Some of these kids don't have winter jackets, and now they're going on these field trips and they're not prepared for the weather. So that's something that we always have to be aware of. Heat, it's really hot in September and October when we're down there, making sure the kids stay hydrated. I always take water with me so that I know that they're drinking water throughout the day. In April and May, it's hot down there as well. The rain, we schedule these field trips a couple weeks in advance. So if there's, unless it's like severely storming, we try to go through with the field trips because they're really hard to reschedule, fitting it in my schedule, fitting it in the school schedule. So these kids are out there in all types of weather, collecting data. The other issue that we had one time was the red tide was really bad on South Padre Island. And it was fine in the morning. It wasn't impacting us because it was raining just a little bit. So the aerosols from the red tide weren't in the air in the morning, but then in the afternoon, the rain stopped. And the second you stepped off the bus, you could feel it. We all just started coughing because of the red tide and the aerosols that were in the air with that. So there's always challenges with weather. And then our favorite challenge is the wildlife. This picture over here on the left-hand side, if you can see all of those black insects, they're lightning bugs, which was just really bizarre. This was just a strange day. We were on North Padre Island and the lightning bugs were really bad. And it's not that they hurt you. It's not that they were just flying in our mouths and in our face and covering us all the time. It was very distracting. There was another day that we were down there where there was butterflies everywhere and the kids were just going crazy trying to chase the butterflies. So that's always interesting. Mosquitoes can be horrible. Before I get to that, snakes. You need to be aware of snakes. Snakes like to hide in the dunes and that tall vegetation. So in some of our locations, we have to wear snake guards. So I have snake guards that I take on some of these field trips. These plastic ones in the heat are a lot of fun to wear. And then, like I was saying, the mosquitoes. This is a sign from down at the Brazoria County Park on Quintana Beach. And sometimes it feels like the mosquitoes truly are going to carry us away because they're just so horrible. So with all of this data that we collect, we make it publicly available. We have the website, and anybody can go on there and download or look at the data and see the beach profiles and see the vegetation line and GPS line mapping. Each school has their own page on our website where I kind of cover some of the information that I shared with you today. What is the issue that we're looking at here? How long has the school been in the program? It has their photos from their field trips. We write a report every year that is published and it's also available for download on the website. And then what we're currently working on right now is creating a web-based 3D model of the coastal environment. We're going to really focus on areas that were impacted by Hurricane Ike and Hurricane Ike in 2008 and Hurricane Harvey in 2017. So we're working on creating these virtual reality models, these 3D models that will be embedded into the website that anybody can go and use them and see the beach impacts and see the beach recovery through time. We're going to create some classroom exercises for the students so that they'll be able to learn more about the coastal zone, how hurricanes impact the beach and dune system, and then also what to look for to see if they're recovering through time. So that's what I have about our program today. I just want to thank you for coming and listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So thank you, Tiffany. If you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, Tiffany. This is Brian Hunt. Nice presentation. And I was just curious, the outreach component, I'm sure you guys have tracked sort of the career paths of some of your students. I'm just curious, what y'all know about that. What kind of influence this had?
I actually know that's not something that I do. I mean, the teachers that I work with, they obviously know what the students are doing. But if you're looking for data about, do I inspire them to go into an environmental field, that's not something that we're tracking with this program. A lot of them do, especially the Port Isabel students, a lot of them do use this program. They'll write essays about it for college applications and stuff like that. Like community, it's almost like a community outreach program that they're doing as well, that helps them with their applications for colleges or even jobs in the future.
Well, I think it's fantastic to get the kids in the field. And I have a niece who's a middle school teacher down at Corpus, and I know some of the challenges that she runs up against just getting the kids outside is, half the battle, really. So anyway,
Oh, yeah.
well done.
Thanks.
Hey, Tiffany, it's Tristan.
Hey, Tristan.
So really cool what you're doing. I guess I'm really pretty interested in these plastic pellets. And,
the Nerdls.
Yeah, the Nerdls, and because I saw them, I guess I noticed them for the first time this summer, and they were everywhere. We were down at Galveston Island. I mean, they were all over the place. Do you know any more about that? And are people acting on that?
Yeah, this Nerdl Patrol, go to nerdlpatrol.org, and they are, you go out for 10 minutes and you see how many you can find in this 10-minute period, and then you can upload it to their data, to their website. And what they're trying to do is find areas where they're concentrated. Is it located near a spill? What is happening in that area? Where could they possibly be coming from? And then they're trying to push bills or to help limit these getting into the system, which is really difficult to do.
Yeah.
From what I understand, these pellets are being loaded into like train cars, and when they do, they just spill. They're so tiny that they just spill out. Jace Tunnel, who runs this program, I contacted him. I was like, okay, I have all these Nerdls. What do I do with them now? And you can't really put them in the recycling because the machines can't, they're different types of plastics. So they can't separate them very well. So there's places where you can send them that they're trying to make art out of it, or like I have some in my office for, this is a Nerdl, so I can show people what they are. But if you collect them, obviously don't just throw them back down on the beach. They tell you to put them in something and dispose of them. You have to throw them in the garbage.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, yeah, we went to the beach, and I mean, it was sad to see how much plastic it was.
Yes. And we're not even talking about just these are the raw material.
Yeah, the beginning.
Tiny pellets. So it's not like broken off shovels or whatever from kids digging in the sand. These are these used in the manufacturing of every plastic thing that is out there.
Yeah, it's wild. But on the other stuff, you guys measuring that, over time, the migration and the growth of the dunes. That's fascinating to see that.
Yeah, that site is really fast. There, that one, that Matagorda Bay, at the nature park there. It's been, the teacher finally had to say, we can't do this anymore. And I was like, yeah, I know. Between the copperheads and the rattlesnakes and the distance that the kids had to cover, it wasn't safe.
Yeah.
But we are still able to get out on the beach and do that shoreline and that vegetation line survey with the GPS. And it's extremely helpful to at least have that information. Yeah,
that's great. I'm sure it's very inspirational to them too. I mean, I did similar things when I was a kid, and it led me down the path I am today. So anyway, great talk. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Jeff has a question about where else we could establish a geoscience monitoring program. Are you specific to the coast, or are you looking for throughout Texas?
Throughout Texas, really. I've asked you before about the coast.
Yeah, I have pretty much the entire populated portion of the coast covered. I'm still way over there at Sabine Pass, but yeah, we're not there. There's, I mean,
That'll happen in my lifetime.
We could do all kinds of geoscience monitoring. I don't know if we can get students involved with like the TextNet program, looking at the data that's online. We could easily come up with some sort of program or project for students across the state to be looking at that data and monitoring it on their side. I don't think you want them out there working with the equipment, but to encourage them to go and look for that data, though, that would be something that would be fun. We could monitor the streams, the water quality. In fact, that is being done in some places, get students involved in stuff like that. But specifically, yeah, monitoring of aquifers, wells, and springs, doing water quality testing. Something that I want to do with my group is there's the Texas Beach Watch that collects water samples along the Texas coast to check the quality of the water in the Gulf of Mexico. So I want to start working with that program at the GLO to have just additional data. They're out there. We can be collecting this data when we're out there as well. Sometimes we do beach cleanup when we're out there as well. I didn't put that in. I forgot about that, but we'll collect the trash. We'll just take a garbage bag and start collecting the trash because there's a lot of it on the Texas coast. But I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do with the geosciences and getting students and schools actively involved in our projects.
Any other questions for Tiffany? Well, again, thank you, Tiffany, for your great talk today. Join us next week for another Friday summer seminar. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great weekend and great week.
Thank you.
Thanks again, too.